Welcome into the Gramlich and McLean podcast, presented by Ingles, the official supermarket of Gramlich and McLean. We are back with another ACC After Further review. We're almost done with these, Mac, because we've done quite a few. If you've missed any of them, please go check them out on our YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get them. But Mac, we are excited about this one. And David Cunningham of Tech Sideline did a great job telling us what in the hell happened in Blacksburg, Virginia this season, Mac.
Yeah, it was really good. I'm dying over here, KG, trying to make it through this.
That's the only way to describe it, right, Mac? That's the only way to set this up.
It was great. And listen, hey, he could have been really emotional like some other people have been, but he wasn't. He was very matter of fact. He laid it out, and I liked how he presented it. And, he said here's an issue here. Here's how you can fix it. You made a change here. Here's what you hope to get from it. And it was just thought through and well laid out. So there were tough things that you have to talk about, and David did a great job. So I'm really grateful for his time. Again, I'm joking about it here in a second, but it was very last minute, and he made it happen. So thankful for him. Thankful he could make it work in our favor, because he did such a great job. So y'all are going to love this, Virginia Tech fans. Let's dive in. Let's hurt together. Let's mourn together, and let's make it happen. Because that's what we have to do. But before we get into it, big shout out to our friends over at Ingles. Let's hear a message from them, and then we'll get into the interview.
Did you know that Ingles sells more organics than any other store? Or that they run their own dairy? Or that they only serve USDA choice and prime meat? Did you know that they have more local craft beer than any place else? Or that they have Energy Smart stores? Or that they professionally slice and package imported cheese from Europe? Did you know about their giant international aisle, local farm partnerships, curbside pickup, wine department? Or that they donate 3,956 meals a day to local food banks? Well, now you do. It's all in the bag. Ingles, low prices, love the savings.
David Cunningham, brother, great to see you. Thank you for joining us. We were kind of joking about this, just to peel back the curtain for some of the folks at home. I meant to text you a week ago, and here I am texting you like 5 hours ago saying, hey, can you come on? Can you join us? So really grateful for your time. Thank you for joining us. Great to see you, buddy.
Yeah, of course. I appreciate you guys having me on. It's an honor to talk with you guys. Great time. And, it's peak women's basketball, men's basketball season, but it's always great to talk ACC football.
David, I like how you said women's basketball first, because that is the truth. In the ACC, we are actually a women's basketball league. And just for the Virginia Tech faithful, I think Megan Duffy's doing a phenomenal job. And I think when she gets this team to the tournament in year one with the roster she inherited, is just an incredible coaching job. So I think that was a really good hire by the Hokies. But let's talk football, David. Okay. Let's go big picture here. How's everybody doing? Like, how's the fan base? All right. Because Mac and I were so excited for Virginia Tech, and I think so many people were going into this year. We talked with Coach Coach Pry, and he was just excited and he seemed confident. And then Vanderbilt game happens, and I know Vanderbilt was actually pretty good, but just overall big picture, David, where is the fan base? Like, where is everybody right now with Virginia Tech?
I think they're still trying to recover a little bit.
Oh no!
I mean, when I say that by when your coach at ACC kickoff says, our goal is to be in Charlotte at the end of the year, and you win 6 games in the regular season, it's a disappointment. And I think when you have everybody basically come back like Virginia Tech did, and when we talk about next season, it's completely different. But you have all these pieces come back. There's familiarity, no coaching staff turnover. You expect to do well, and they just got off on the wrong foot. And it wasn't like they were so far off in all of these games, but they lost 6 games in the regular season, and 5 of them they were leading at one point during the game. Like one of the biggest ones that everybody will remember is the end of the Miami game, the Hail Mary and everything that happened there. But there were other points during that game where Virginia Tech had an opportunity to close it out. The Syracuse game, to me, was the biggest one. The Hokies are up 21-3 and blow that lead, and it goes to overtime. This program, as you guys know, rabid fan base, everybody wants this team to do so well. And it seemed last season like everything was trending in the right direction. And then you come into this year and nowhere close to expectations, even if expectations were raised more than they probably should have been. So I think people are questioning everything at this point. And to be fair, I think the Hokies have done a pretty good job in the portal. And I think Brent Pry has, he made 3 staff changes this offseason. I think he's done a pretty good job of trying to rewrite the ship. But I think you have to, in some ways, a little bit win back the fan base and win back their trust, because they expected big things and didn't come close this past season.
Yeah, and that's a great answer, and I really appreciate how you kind of articulated that and gave facts and gave reason. It's not just some emotional spew. Like that, there's legitimate frustration that should be had. My biggest thing is why? What the heck happened? And I know the changes that we made, but you mentioned all those guys coming back, and you mentioned the leadership, and I thought Kyron Drone was going to take this massive leap and step, and I know he was injured for a lot of the season, but it never looked like anything of what I thought it should or would look like. And I could probably tell you schematically from afar, but David, you're there, boots on the ground, and you're around the program, and you hear different things. Like, what was the biggest reason or the biggest couple of reasons as why we fell flat on our face 6 and 7?
I think it was a variety of things, and I think in a situation like that, of course, it's going to be. I mean, you take the Vanderbilt game, for example, the first game of the year, they just came out flat. Too many mistakes. This is a program that has prided itself on special teams for so long, going back to Frank Beamer, and Tech had a double numbers penalty in that first game of the year that basically gifted Vanderbilt 3 points. Like, little tiny things like that just add up and add up and add up. Against Rutgers, that was probably the game that Virginia Tech least deserved to win, because it never really led in that game. But the Miami game, Virginia Tech led going into halftime, but some things at the end of the first half let Miami get an extra 3 points there. I can go down the list of the schedule. Like, you're leading 21-3 against Syracuse, and one of the changes Brent Pry made this offseason was the strength and conditioning coach. Hokies have, he let go of the old strength and conditioning coach, hired somebody that was already in the program, and a guy who played for Virginia Tech and goes back to the Mike Gentry days and Jarrett Ferguson. But I think Virginia Tech had a problem where guys weren't in shape and guys weren't in game form at the end of games. They were getting exhausted, and that showed up in the 2 overtime games Tech played. And I think once you got down to the end of the season, I thought Virginia Tech played okay, all things considered, against Clemson when the Tigers came to Blacksburg. But you're dealing with a Kyron Jones who's hobbled, and you're dealing with a Bashal Tutin who's hobbled. And the Hokies, I don't think, gave a running back a single carry in that game. So just a multitude of things where they kept getting set back a little bit and set back a little bit. Some of their own doing, some just injuries, a variety of things where, like Virginia Tech escaped that Georgia Tech game with a Kyron Jones who was not 100%. Kyron Jones didn't even play against Syracuse. Colin Schlee and Jeremiah Coney, Malachi Thomas, the 2 backup running backs, come in and basically try to win Virginia Tech that game and play well. It just felt like every time Virginia Tech put 1 foot forward, there was something taken 2 steps back, if that makes sense. And it wasn't the same thing every single time. And it's a real bummer, because these past couple weeks, the Senior Bowl was going on, and there were 5 Virginia Tech players there and performing well. You're talking about Daquan Felton, Aeneas Peebles, Bashal Tutin, Dorian Strong. I know I'm forgetting one. But it's like, Jalen Lane. It's like all these guys are playing so well. You have so much senior talent. And every single time, Tech just was a bit off. And even when you got to the end of the season, especially, it's like, at that point, Kyron Jones is not in a good spot health-wise. But even then, the offense was hit or miss at times. The defense was hit or miss at times. It was like there was no consistency across the board from anybody, including the coaching staff.
I think that's a great way to explain it, David. There's a good bit of nuance in there, because it is a nuanced situation. It's not just one thing. But what you say is the lack of consistency. And I think that if you had to pick one thing, that's probably it. Now, obviously some of that is consistency in terms of who's available because injuries happen, but it almost was something different every game, to your point. And when you had all those guys coming back and some elite talent, APR, Bashal Tootin, who still had a phenomenal year, it's just got to be so frustrating for those fans. From a silver lining perspective, the fact that Kyron Drones was not able to have the kind of year that would have propelled him to leave because of injury for the most part, like, is that something that this program is maybe, or the fan base is rallying around? Like, you get Kyron Drones back. I mean, that's got to be a good thing overall.
Yeah, I think the funny thing is, last season Virginia Tech had basically everybody coming back. This year the Hokies have nearly nobody coming back, starting wise, except for Kyron Drones and of course Pop Watson, who everybody saw in that UVA game.
Yes,
Virginia Tech.
let's talk about that too, because Pop Watson, I mean, he did some really cool things. So now, I mean, is there a little bit too of a quarterback controversy?
I Yes and no. I think Kyron Drones, as long as he's in Blacksburg, he's going to be the guy. But we still don't know if Pop Watson or if Kyron Drones is going to be healthy for the spring. So there's a chance where Pop Watson gets all of the QB1 reps this spring. But it's funny, like Tech brings back its two quarterbacks, and then everything else is kind of just fill it in. I think that is the silver lining. It's that you have a quarterback that he showed 2 years ago, and even in glimpses last year, that when he's healthy, when he is given the right tools to succeed, he is going to be in a good spot. And I do think that the Hokies have done, a pretty good job in the portal of getting guys in that fit their system. Now, we've seen it work well at times, work not so well at other times. There's still a long way to go with that and getting all these guys meshed together. But on paper, it looks like Tech did a pretty good job of filling in some of those holes. But the problem is, it's like you have all those guys come back, capitalize on them when you have them. That's the tough part. But I do think that is a big silver lining, because it's like, you know who your quarterback is. And if for some reason Kyron Drones can't go in the spring, Pop Watson gets to learn so much. He's a guy who has limited experience, and he's played well. He played great against UVA, and he played okay against Duke and Minnesota when he was called upon. But Tech is set at the quarterback position. Now it's just filling in everything else around them. So
Yeah.
that's a tough task, I think, in some cases for the coaching staff.
Yeah, and just to build that chemistry with all these new pass catchers. I mean, like you mentioned, with so many guys moving on or running out of eligibility, whatever it is, that's tough to have your QB1. And if he is not able to go in the spring, there might be some growing pains. And thankfully you get summer and fall camp and all that. But, it's something where you would love to have, at least the bulk of your team ready to go and able to go through stuff together. Man, when I look at this and I see, Hokie fans all the time really frustrated with the one-score games and not being able to finish the deal. I know we talked a little bit about strength and conditioning, and obviously there was a change there, but how do you perceive, or what do you think is the next step? How do they get over that where you're winning those games and really changing your entire season?
I think coaches always talk about you have to learn how to win. And I think Virginia Tech has never quite learned how to win close games. I think every single time a situation like that came up, a little panicked, and maybe partly from the staff, but also from the players. Virginia Tech is leading in that first game of the year at Vanderbilt after trailing the majority of the game. Tech's leading with like 2 minutes to go, gets the ball back, and punts. 3 and out, I think gained maybe 2 yards, right? Ran off no time, gave the ball. Like, just when you're in those situations, you have to execute. That's peak execution time. And I think time and time again, we saw that where, like, I keep going back to that Syracuse game, just a complete defensive collapse in that second half where that game should have been over. And Syracuse found a way, and again, you're on the road in the Dome, which, as you guys know, is a pretty loud environment when that place gets rocking. But Virginia Tech just kind of caved in. And I think in those situations, that's where you're supposed to be at your best. Your team chemistry is supposed to come together and help you pull through in those moments. And like I look at that Miami game, Tech had opportunities to kind of close it out. And you could point fingers and say, okay, maybe Brent Pry could have handled some situations differently. He called timeout after Tech was sacked at the end of the first half, which led to a long field goal, 57-yarder from John Love, but gave Miami time to come back down the field and kick a field goal to get 3 points back. Just little tiny things here and there. And I think Brent Pry, I think that's what he's been learning in his own right this offseason, is how to handle those situations better. But I think it's really surprising at how poorly Tech was a lot of times in some of those moments, considering what we just talked about, how old this team was, how many veterans were on this team. It just seemed like in some of those moments, they weren't at their best for whatever reason. And it is a little bit alarming, I think, if you're a Virginia Tech fan. Like, there's the one score record of, it's like 1-11 or 1-12. Tech fans, I think, probably know it by heart now because they just heard it so many times this season. But that's what happens when you're in position and can't quite get over the hump. And you have to figure out whatever it is to get over the hump. And again, it's not like Tech was so far off. It's like, just do one little thing better in this situation, one little thing better in this situation. Like we talked about, Kelly. Like, it's just a combination of things. And it just seemed like every little thing went wrong for Virginia Tech in those situations. And that comes down to situational football, in all honesty. And that's something, Virginia Tech hired a defensive coordinator in Sam Seifkes the other day, and we had him on our podcast last week. And that's something he talked about, just being good in situational areas. And I'm wondering if that is a place where Virginia Tech is much better late games as a result. A guy who loves thriving in that area and teaching about that. That's what I'm curious about Tech going forward, is how do you improve there? And I think the new defensive coordinator hire might help in that area.
Yeah, let's hope so. Let's talk about kind of the elephant in the room as we mention these close losses. Like, if you beat Miami, if you beat Vandy, which, like you said, leading with 2 minutes to go, you win 8 games, it's a whole different feeling, right? Bowl game, who cares? Like, I don't put much stock into the bowl games anymore, to be honest. So where are we with Coach Pry? Like, what do you think, David, in terms of, like, obviously this coming year, we're going to talk about the schedule and expectations, is massive for him. Where do you think he is with the administration, the fan base, just that kind of thing right now?
I think he's in a good spot, but he has to show results. I think the fans really, really like him. I think he does. I think
he fits Virginia Tech really well.
He does.
He's a good fit. We know that.
He does. He does everything right, I think, from an off-the-field perspective. I think he has recruited well. I think he has good staff chemistry. He's been able to retain his staff. What the previous coach, Justin Fuente, could not do or did not have in terms of resources, Brent Pry has capitalized on those and I think made the most of it. I think Virginia Tech has pretty good NIL backing, and you've seen that, where the Hokies were able to retain so many guys from last season. But you have to get the on-field results, and that's the missing piece. And Brent Pry, Whit Babcock, the athletic director, talked about in the offseason about just, I'm going to sit down with Brent Pry and we're going to go over everything. And that's when, right after that, Brent Pry made those 3 staff changes. He hired a new offensive line coach, a new defensive coordinator, a new strength and conditioning coach. Does that get him over the hump? I'm not quite sure. But he at least made some changes to try to figure it out and improve. I think the fan base really, really likes Brent Pry because he says all the right things and does all the right off the field stuff. And I honestly think he has put together a good coaching staff where there are some elite recruiters on this staff. There are guys who have been able to develop really good talent, but for whatever reason, the final product has not been there. If Tech can get that final product right, if this program can go out and win 7, 8 games this year, I think Virginia Tech fans are going to be super confident going into next season. And I think they really like Brent Pry and everything he's doing. It's just, you got to get over that hump. You got to win games. That's the bottom line. And it seems very simple, but I think it is. It's like you put in so much effort in the signing day and being transparent, I think, with fans and just, hey, here's our situation. And you take advantage of all of the resources you have, and you're in a good spot. And then when it gets to September, October, November, you've got to put the product on the field and win games. And that's just been the missing piece. And we just talked about it. It's not like they're that far off. They're just a
Correct.
tad off. And I think that is the disappointing thing for fans. It's like,
Right.
man, we're right there.
Yeah. It's almost like, can we just get blown out instead of losing these heartbreakers, right? Like, which would you rather, Because I'm sure it
Yeah.
is as frustrating as all get out when I look at this schedule and I see 5 one-score games. I mean, it's crazy, and a handful of those are in overtime, and a handful of those are, like you said, spots Virginia Tech was in where you could slam the door and you don't. And so mentality wise, can you build that in the offseason? Can you build that in the weight room? Sure. But it is a big shift that has to really start at the top and go to the bottom. And it's just one of those things. And like you said, winning solves everything. So just do it. Just get it done, which it's hard to win. It's very hard. I get it. Let's talk defense for a second there, because I thought that it's just another thing the Virginia Tech fans not super happy about. I don't know if, honestly, the knee-jerk reaction I don't think was uber positive. But you said you spoke to him. You like what he's going to bring to the table. Kind of tell us a little bit about that, conversation and what Hokie fans can expect defensively next year.
Yeah. Sam Seifkus is the new defensive coordinator, and he linebackers coach from the Arizona Cardinals. And you guys know how coaching changes and coaching carousels work, where you have people are plane tracking and their names all over the message boards and whatnot. Sam Seifkus was not a name that was anywhere. And I think that was the instant reaction from Virginia Tech fans. Who in the world is this guy? But when you look at his resume, and when Virginia Tech put out its release announcing him, he has gotten recommendations from everybody in the business. We're talking Jonathan Gannon and Mike Zimmer. The list goes on and on in the NFL. Dave Aranda was a guy who gave compliments about Sam. It's a guy who I think will bring a unique style to Virginia Tech, where I think the Hokies are going to be pretty multiple in what they do. Um, People look at his defensive coordinator experience and go, well, he hasn't done it at the Power 5 level. Well, he did it for 2 or 3 years at the D3 level at Wisconsin Platteville and had really good defenses. And then he went to the SoCon and did it at Wofford and had really good defenses for 2 years. And when we had a chance to bring him on our Tech Sideline podcast last week and talk to him, I thought he was pretty honest and just, I learned so much in those years at the FCS and the D3 level, and just how to adjust. And you're facing a different offense every single week, where you have to prep your players differently. It's not you can just roll the same game plan and hope it works. It's you have to kind of tinker and play best to your players' ability. And I
Right.
think it's still a question as to how what he's going to do fits Tech's personnel. And that's, of course, what the Hokies are going to figure out this spring. But he's a very inquisitive mind who brings a lot. Now, will it work? I think everybody in Blacksburg hopes so. And that's the hope. And Brent Pry's, Brent Pry's future at Virginia Tech, a lot of stake is in this hire. But from the outside, this is a guy who knows football. He knows what he's doing. And he's learned from some of the best in the business. And if you're a Virginia Tech fan, I think you have reason to be pretty optimistic without getting your hopes
Right.
too high up.
Mhm.
Because this is a guy who he like just chatting football with him. Eric, you would love just breaking down the X's and O's with this guy, because
Yeah.
like he has seen everything. Just talking about some of the stuff he's done with the Vikings and the Cardinals in the NFL. I think he's one of the best young minds. And Brent Pry said he was told by some NFL head coaches that this guy's going to be an NFL coordinator here in the near future. So I
Right.
think the Hokies are banking on the fact that they think they've got a future NFL coordinator kind of in their midst, for a couple years here, and he can kind of turn this program around.
Sure, get him while you can, and quickly before we move on to 25 and look at the schedule. I think it's a fantastic point that you just brought up because we've heard from multiple coaches that yeah, it's great. You're at Clemson, you're at Georgia, you're at Bama. You got the best of the best. It's probably easy to coach in regards to positionally or calling plays, but when you're at Walford and you got to be creative and you have to dial it up and you don't know what the heck you're going to have year to year, that's where you really find it out. And that's where you really find out who you are as a coach and how you're able to adjust and how you're able to make it fit. So that's a fantastic point. Maybe not super relatable to the NFL days where he literally has the best there is, but certainly his upbringing. And I love that. That's a great point, KG.
Yeah, you want someone who's kind of clawed their way up. And I think, like you said, just a fresh young mind there. Hopefully we see some better results defensively. David, let's look at this schedule, okay? We did a lot of these earlier where we didn't have a full schedule. So now we have a full schedule for Virginia Tech, which is exciting. And of course, the Beamer Bowl. You open with South Carolina in Atlanta, Aflac kickoff game. Very exciting for a lot of reasons. You obviously have the Beamer storyline there. Frank Beamer, what colors will he be wearing? I assume he'll be attending, maybe half and half. But a massive opening game, and we'll learn a lot. And then Vanderbilt, week 2, who's returning Pavia, for his 15th year. That game's at home. But, I mean, we're going to learn a lot right away, David, with this schedule.
Yeah, that South Carolina game is I mean, Virginia, like, no easing into it. Like, you're just walking right into Atlanta, and you're facing a South Carolina team that, yes, has Shane Beamer as its head coach, but also has some really, really good talent. I mean, Lenora Sellers is back.
Hey, let me give you a little tip, David. Don't take your fastest linebacker off the field and put a nickel back on. Leave the size on the field.
A certain team did that in a
Just the
certain
tip.
rivalry game that was just baffling.
I mean, this South Carolina team is really, really good, as you guys know. And Virginia Tech opens a season in Atlanta. That's going to be, I think, a really, really good atmosphere. It's going to be a really fun game. And I'm curious to know, does Virginia Tech have a little bit of an advantage in some areas because Sam Seifkis, as defensive coordinator, the unknown he brings, right? If you're South Carolina, if you're Shane Beamer, what kind of film are you going to be looking at? Are you going to be scraping old Wofford and UW Platteville film? Are you going to be scraping Vikings and Cardinals film? And this is kind of the day and age that all these coaches live in, where Virginia Tech ran into it last year facing Vanderbilt in the opener, who Tech plays week 2. Scraping New Mexico State film with Diego Pavia and Jerry Keel. And of course, Pavia's back. And this is a game that Virginia Tech probably should have won in Nashville last year. Didn't. The Hokies have to start the season strong this year. I'm not saying Tech is going to win both games, but you probably have to go 1-1 at least to give yourself a little bit of momentum. Virginia Tech has not beaten a Power 5 non-conference opponent since 2017. West Virginia. That is the longest streak in the country. The Hokie, and there have been a number of opportunities. Tech's had Notre Dame and West Virginia, both at home and on the road, opportunities to win, has not done it. South Carolina, Vanderbilt, should have broken it. Vanderbilt this year, Purdue, Rutgers, I mean, the list just goes on and on. The Hokies have to start on a good note this season, and it's not going to be easy. South Carolina, I think Vanderbilt, you get them at home in Lane Stadium, that's the home opener. In theory, the Hokies can come out on paper and they know what they're going to see a little bit because they saw Pavia last year and that offense, but you got to start fast. And you're playing 2 SEC opponents to open the season. I think as a Virginia Tech fan, you've got to be excited, but at the same time, a little bit of scared because, man, it's like do or die those first 2 weeks of the year.
Yeah. And it hasn't been, as you just laid out, historically favorable in regards to the hot starts, in regards to getting going in a hurry. And, we thought that would be different last year with all that roster coming back, and it still wasn't. So how do you get there I'm going to be fascinated to see the strength and conditioning program. How does that help? How does that get us going? You have a guy that has sweat, bled, cried there, and now he's the head man leading the way down in the weight room. You have a new coordinator. It's going to be fascinating for sure. And then you look at the rest of the way. I mean, not a brutal stretch when you look September 13th, really through October 23rd. I know Georgia Tech is going to be really good, but that ending with Louisville, Florida State, who knows what they're going to be, Miami, and of course the rivalry game. That's a tough one right there as well to really finish the year. But that's probably where you want it, right? Where you're playing your best ball, championship phase. Like, let's put the hammer down and make it happen. For you, David, and we'll let you get out here on this, maybe one or two things. This has to happen, and Virginia Tech will win 8+ games next year.
I think Kyron Drones has to stay healthy, and that's something you can't control if you're Virginia Tech. But if he is close to not being able to go in spring ball, just put him on the sidelines. Just let him relax, man. You need to get that guy healthy. I think Kyron Drones is kind of the key, the glue that holds everything together for Virginia Tech. We saw this is a really good quarterback when he's put in the right position and has the right guys around him. And as you just said, Eric, this schedule, it's favorable in some areas. The Hokies have shown they are able to win some games when Kyron Drones is healthy and at his best. It's a little bit of a bummer that he does not have Bashal Tutin next to him anymore because, man, Tutin is a workhorse. I'm so interested to see what this defense looks like with so many new faces. But when you have Kyron Drones on the offensive side of the ball, I'm curious to see. You have to have young players step up defensively. One of the guys I'm really looking at is at cornerback, and Dante Lovett. He's a guy who was sitting behind Mansour Delane and Dorian Strong these last couple of years, and I think he's kind of an anchor on the defensive side of the ball for the Hokies. They have to be better in the secondary this year, and they brought in like 4 or 5 safeties in the transfer portal. So in theory, new blood, new faces. I think if the Hokies are better in the secondary this year, they'll be really good. We've seen them be good up front. Antoine Powell-Ryland was a beast, and Aeneas Peoples was a beast, but they've got to be better in the secondary, I think. But if you can put those two things together, and I can't get off here without saying the offensive line. The offensive line has to be good. You have to improve up there. And they got a new offensive line coach in Matt Moore from West Virginia.
It helps.
So I think
it helps if you're good up front.
I think the hope is that Matt Moore improves there. But I think there's room for excitement for Virginia Tech fans and reason for excitement for the season. At the same time, I think everybody's just kind of wondering what if. And if Kyron Drones stays healthy, I think this team has a legit chance to be really, really good. That's a lot of pressure riding on a quarterback. But in this day and age, he's the most important player on the field.
Okay. Yeah, that's how it goes. David, this was great. You do a great job. This is just a quick little nugget. Are Virginia Tech fans a little mad that Virginia has a bye week before the game and Virginia Tech has Miami? Or are they just like, let's play on a blacktop, like we'll beat Virginia wherever? How do they feel about that?
I think it's a little bit of both.
That's crazy. Like, I'm not sure I've ever seen that for a rivalry game. Someone has a bye and someone has Miami.
I'm pretty sure. I think when I brought it up, because I went and looked, there are some ACC teams. I think it's like Duke is one of those teams that has like a game and then a bye and then another game.
Yeah, it's weird.
There are a couple of teams that have very weird schedules like that. I think UVA had a bye before playing Tech I think it was in 2019.
Okay, so it's happened.
Were they won?
UVA had, but it wasn't directly before. It was UVA had a bye and then played Liberty and then played Virginia Tech. And that was the last time the Cavaliers beat the Hokies. So if you're a Virginia Tech fan, I mean, Tech's beaten UVA pretty handily these last couple years.
Couple.
And I think
25.
I think it is one of those things, Kelly, where it's, we'll beat UVA anywhere, anytime.
Yeah.
At the same time.
But also, yeah.
Yeah. And also, that last stretch, like you guys talked about, leading into that game, Louisville's really, really good. Florida State, who knows what they're going to be. And then Miami's, new quarterback. That is a tough November for the Hokies.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
It really is. David, this was a lot of fun, man. Cannot thank you enough. Great insight. Love the way you laid it all out. Very matter of fact. Thank you for your time. Hope Hokie fans really tune in and love this episode.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me on. It was a blast. Can't wait to talk more in the future.
All right, there we go. Big shout out to David Cunningham. Grateful for his time to join us and discuss the Hokies. Really loved the way that he broke it down. Very thorough, thought through. Just a great job there because it was a difficult season. I'm sure that he, kind of spelled out and the way he feels about a lot of the way that you guys feel as Hokie fans and just not quite meeting expectation in a really weird year. Just the excitement going into it. I'm right there with you. I thought you guys were going to have an awesome season and an awesome year, and it didn't happen. And that's unfortunate because you deserve it. I love Hokie fans. Every time I've been there, that place is unbelievable. And it's a lot of fun to go to. So I hope that we can get that back and get it going in the right direction. You might think this is a little weird. I'm here by myself. KG not with me because I'm having to redo our outro as there's been a little breaking news as Virginia Tech offensive coordinator Tyler Bowen leaving, going somewhere else. He's going to Ohio State to be their offensive line coach. Kind of interesting. I get it. A great program, just won a national championship, but I kind of want to be an offensive coordinator. I want to be a head coach. It's a weird move, but it is what it is, I guess. So here we are, Hokies. We got to go get two coordinators, same offseason. Don't love it. Interesting to see what happens. Instant reaction. A lot of Hokies fans not mad about it. So we'll see. We'll see the direction and where things kind of go. But let me know in the comments. Who do you guys want? Who do you want to go get? What fits? What makes the most sense? And does this send any type of ripple effect to that quarterback situation? I almost said competition that you guys have and Blacksburg. So we'll see. Anyway, appreciate you guys always. Hit up Rowback. You see the logo on the chest here. 20% on their website. They have some amazing things for Hokies fans. Love their stuff. Looks really, really good. Go get that. Use our code GMPOD. We're going to save you some money there. And then, of course, Ingles. Can't thank them enough for everything that they do for us. So until next time, we'll see y'all.